All righty, another special treat in store. I've been bragging on this guy so much that I'm giving him a panic attack because so much is expected of him. This man is the fourth member of the Trinity, and Wayne Williams is a close friend, and I love him and his wife and their family. They're sort of family to me. And Wayne is the owner and CEO of a communications company called Telect, which specializes in connectivity. If you've been with AT&T for any time, Wayne's company's done a lot for setting up the hardware that solves the AT&T problems. He is an awesome guy. He's a great Christian. He's seriously about personal growth and business growth. And I can't think of anybody better than to have Wayne come over and give Wayne a big hand.
Thank you, John.
Go for it.
Oh, isn't this nice? Sorry about that. Well, I thought John did. He's overbilled me, I think, as a futurist. I will tell you, when I first got a chance to meet John was about 3 years ago. I was with Dave Lindsay, and we were down in Napa, California at a conference, and it was wonderful to meet him. He was speaking on mentoring, and we were in YPO, WPO, Christian Fellowship Network, and so it was great. I got a chance to meet Dave and Jess at the same time. The next time I walked in with John, I was with another friend that's here, and that's Lisa Hotchkiss. She'll remember. She's in my TLP group from last year, and so we're second-year people, and I got put into a chair like this. So I'm trying to share for all these people that have some empathy, and I was fine. It was in John's living room in his house. I sat down, and I took the chair closest to the door for whatever reason, and it was the first time, and then all of a sudden these veterans walked in, and they dropped like 5 boxes of Kleenex in the middle of the room. And I have this tendency, you'll watch, my knee starts going. I actually thought about developing a product to charge your iPhone when you're doing that, but that's how I was. And so I get back that night, and I tell my wife about that at the hotel room, and she just is certain I am not going to show back up. And I shared that story with you a little bit because I didn't know this futurist that I've been billed at. I didn't know I'd be sitting here today. I've had so much growth in the last year, and so I wished I was with you guys the last 3 or 4 days that we're here, because it's just a tremendous honor and it's a great opportunity to be there. My wife showed up at the relationship retreat at TLP last year, thinking she was there to support me, and she quickly got processed, and so she is now in the group with me. So the topic I wanted to talk about, which is amazing, because listening to Gary today and Dave today and John just kind of walk through this, and listening to Ken Blanchard, is really facing your futurist without fear. And I have, the reason I wanted to share it, I do spend a lot of time in the future. I'll share with you a little bit, which is kind of twisted on how I think. And I look at things, but fear is one of these. It's really interesting because it will do one of two things for people. I have found it'll either paralyze them out of worry, or it'll excite them out of something for tomorrow. But we all have it inside of us, and I've heard it said that fear is false expectations appearing real. And many times when we get up to that point, we see that. We get an idea, we think, oh, this is going to happen. Do I make that telephone call, that hard phone call? Is it going to, am I really going to get the outcome that I thought it was going to be? And so it's been powerful for me to understand how to balance fear. And I'll touch a little bit on those, on what I've learned even through the program a bit. So with this, I tend to, my futurist, to see how Wayne thinks a little bit. I'll share that because I need to get you into that mode for a minute. I tend to find myself just embracing somebody or something very quickly. I drive down the road, and I looked, years ago, I look at the stoplights on the road, and they go red, yellow, green, and I ask, well, why are they stacked that way? Why aren't they green, yellow, red? If they want everybody to stop, then put them closer to the bottom of the road. I just think in that way, try to gather ideas, and I'm sharing this with you because I think everybody that you've been told your whole life, if you do this and then this and then this all the way through school, you don't get a chance to really experience engaging this next space. And so I like to gather, and then I like to evaluate a situation. I can tend to do it very fast, and then I take into account for into account. And I do that. This program here, I ran this because John loves this program. It's called WordFlex by Oxford Dictionary, and this is how Wayne's mind thinks. And it's kind of it's crazy, but if you talk about strategy, then I want to go out, well, what's strategy? What's the next product? It's all the way for a product idea. When Apple rolled the iPhone out, I didn't ask, like, what is the iPhone? I want to know, where is it going to go tomorrow? And so you do that in life, and you take that, and you kind of look at the range of view and scope, and then sketch out something. So those people that are interested in starting businesses or your counseling sessions or becoming a counselor and doing that when you're doing it, it's really important you get people around you to do that, but start to give you new experiences and bring that in. I go all the way down this strategy, goal, the tactic, and what ended up happening to me the last couple of years is that I really understood Drucker's statement so much better going through this program, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that inside of management and inside of leadership, we really, we kind of forget that. And I had a point in time in my life where I kind of forgot that because it was really deep down inside. It embodied who I was because people were really important to me. And I wanted to make sure that I stayed focused on that. So this is kind of my life walk through 2000. I'm going to hit a couple of these key points fast for you. Telec, I started with my parents in 1982. Prior to that, I was raised in the Northwest. I was born in Alaska, and I really struggled early on. I had epilepsy from the time I was 3 till I was 12, and I outgrew it. I was one of 50% of the kids that actually outgrew it. And I really wanted to get into the military. I wanted to move back to Alaska, hunt and fish, and just be single for the rest of my life. So I thought the military was going to be it. 3 weeks before Telec started, I found out I couldn't get into the military because of my previous epilepsy. And so my dad told me he's going to start this business. And really, I did not want to work around my dad at this time. I'm 18 years old. I want to do my own thing. And I ended up starting at Telec. And during that time, shortly after that, I met my wife, who is with me today. Tarina's here. And we've been married 31 and a half years. So there went the single idea. It didn't happen, right? And I still like to hunt and fish. But what's really interesting is then we ended up having kids. God took us down a completely different path. A different path, took me down a different path, and also her, because she had different goals and dreams and ideas on what that future might look like. And then I developed patents, a couple of patents in the industry, in the telecom industry. Both of those patents contributed about $1.5 billion of product and revenue for us in that 32-year period that we've been out there. And then I go through this, but that 91 to 94 time frame was really interesting because I work in a family business, and some of you will work in a family business there, and it has its own set of dramatic points. And I remember my dad sitting down with me in 1991, actually wasn't sitting down with me. I think we were having a deeper discussion, and he said, if I had to pick a president today, it wouldn't be you. And so when you hear those things, like, it wouldn't be you. And now, in his side, he'd be saying, I want to fire you up, because that's kind of the way I was raised, fire me up. And so what I did was I went out and I pursued a Harvard owner-president management program, and because I was charged by it. So my background is I get charged by something that becomes an obstacle on where it's at, and so I take that and kind of embrace it. But it was a tough time, and so I ended up, you can see this curve all the way through 2000. By the time I decided to pursue an IPO, we had 2,400 people worldwide, in 7 different locations around the globe. Our business was worth $1.9 billion. Everybody that we were going down the path, I was praying for God to open a door or close a door, and in this IPO process. And 13 days before the IPO was going to price in December of 2000, I just got this sense, no, God, you're saying to just stop. And so we pulled off the roadshow. And I still thought we were going to be successful in the roadshow. And until about December 10th of that year, and all of a sudden we could see all of the top accounts that we had on our IPO roadshow: Nortel, Global Crossings, Tyco, Enron, 360 Networks, Quest. All of these accounts started to unravel with us, and so $275 million heading towards it, 2,400 employees all around the globe. And so then what happened is I ended up waking up to these kind of things in the newspaper. And you never want to be above the fold in a newspaper, just so you know that, especially in a local town. We're the 3rd largest manufacturer in the area at the time. And I started the process that I didn't think I would be asked to do, and that was to unwind a business in a 24-month period from 2,400 people down to 500 people and from $275 million down to $60 million. And you know, God's the only reason that I'm standing here in front of you today with this story, and it's also the people. But I got hit in the one part that was the hardest, and that was around the people, because I was a relator. I was somebody that always loved the people. I wanted to spend time around the people. So then I went into this other mode, and I went into this survival mode, which was dangerous. I mean, I found this out, quite a bit since then. I went into the mode where I was very good tactically. I'm very good. I can gather. I can do those things, but very much focused on the business during this time. And as you can see, this was what the drop looked like afterwards, the slide. So we had 70% growth in 1 year, 99 to 2000, and I had a 70% decline in 24 months. And what was interesting about that, I learned a lot of things. I was sharing today. I learned that the people that were with you during the good times aren't always going to be the right ones you need through the bad times. I learned the people that said they're going to be with you through the bad times will abandon you very, very quickly. And I learned that when you're growing and you're trying to rebuild, you have to rebuild. You can't do the same. You can't do it on the same scale. So you can want to hang on to something so badly, the culture. And we had a very, very strong culture that culture almost needed to get switched around and flipped so quickly in a 24-month period. And we never really changed our culture. So then the culture still stayed there. So you're trying to love people, trying to care about people. And those are the same people that had their heads down in a war zone, in a foxhole, and they didn't want to come out of the foxhole with you. And so it's really interesting. If I take and look at that and you go, boy, that's quite a beat. It's been growth and discovery for me. I did make an acquisition in the midst of this, which kind of helped us. But this is kind of my growth walk area. And because when I take and you stretch time out, and I love it that God does not work with us in a microwave, but yet, He works with us in that oven, and John shared that. What's interesting for me is that I used to like the microwave. I'm very fast. I think Ronnie, was shuttling me around, and Andrew with IT, I just disappear. I asked her if she'd ever seen the movie Mr. Deeds, and I said sometimes I can be that butler that's like, I'm so amazed by the power of his sneakiness, because I was just gone. But I like to move fast, but what I've really understood is that God does. His time is so much different than my time, and I don't see it. So when I can look back on a situation, and it's dangerous to run your life in the rearview mirror. It's because that's why it's smaller in your car than the windshield, but it's good to always know where your foundation's at. And so going through this growth was interesting. We got hit again with 9/11. During that time, I got hit with, if those of you that had any investments in WorldCom, they got in trouble for a $10 billion rebooking of expense to revenue. And it sent the marketplace down again. And our marketplace is continually in turmoil. So today I live in a space right now where I have to be on the edge all the time. John would give me credit for AT&T's stuff. AT&T is a big customer of ours. I have I can't take any account or credit or discredit to their performance in the marketplace. All the carriers are under an excruciating amount of competition, and it's global competition. And those things are for another time. But during this time at TLP, it's been huge because I had to unlock some things. I could also come in here and say, hello, I'm Wayne Williams. I suffer with guilt. Because guilt is in me. I suffer with, fear, real fear. I didn't want to make those calls. I suffer with fear because I grew up kind of in an environment where perfection is not an unreasonable goal. And so when you have that environment, you can't match. So you can look at my scale here and go, oh man, he's as a business person, he's not successful. And I might say that if it's like whether you're in a baseball team or what, batting 500 or batting 1,000. But things are never static. We're always growing through that. And so with this, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I'm going to hit 7 gears. You'll hear grab another gear. I'm big on that. Harold Janine said, and if any Harold Janine knowledge people from way back in ITT technically, his phrase was, managers will manage, managers will manage, managers will manage. And that, so if you look back then you got the Jack Welches, you come through, and then you get into the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates, and you come through here today. But the one thing that I've really understood during this whole process is that it is about relationships. I've recentered myself back on relationships, but my relationship was always about other people, and it wasn't about me first. And that's been an antithesis to me because I've been challenged to not think servant leadership, but to think leader-servantship. And I have to be the best leader possible in that, as John has encouraged me and my team has encouraged me. Because how am I going to be able to live up to that verse where it says I'm supposed to love God and then I have to love others as myself? I've got to have that. I've got to have God really inside of me. So my first and foremost day starts out, and one of my habits is really in and around my relationship with Him, and it's constant. Every single day that I'm walking through my life, I'm asking, Lord, where are you? I got some big decisions coming up in our business all the time on strategy, on what we're doing, and so I'm taking those to Him. And so I would just really, I would think the next 10 years we're going to be saying that John Townsend, he's going to say, leaders will relate, leaders will relate, leaders will relate. It won't be the Harold Janine parts of management in the past. So I'm excited to see that thing. The next thing is walk your talk, your character. And I will tell you a quick story. My dad had snowmobiles early on when my boys were like 8 and 5. And when my dad had his snowmobiles up and he comes up, delivered them to our house, it's snowing. I take the snowmobiles out of the trailer. My boys are there. They're ready to go snowmobiling. When I pulled my mom's snowmobile out, I laid it down on its side and I scratched the side. And so my boys at 8 and 5 immediately look at me and go, what are you going to tell Grandpa? And I said, I'm going to tell him. And they go, are you sure? So I drove back down to the driveway, drove the snowmobiles down. And my dad, if you wanted to buy a car or something, you want to buy it used because it's better shape than it was new. And so anyway, he comes down or I go down to the kids, I tell my wife, what's he going to say? She goes, well, he's going to say, I've had those snowmobiles for 3 years and you've never had a scratch on them. So we go down, my dad never shows up. He shows up that day, right there, right coming down the driveway. They look at me, Dad, what are you going to tell Grandpa? Are you going to tell Grandpa? I mean, they're just watching in this moment. And I go, yeah. And inside, those hard things like, oh, how can I put this off? I can't. My boys are standing right here. So they're going to be right next to me. And so he comes down, he looks at him, how's it going? So I immediately say, hey, this is what I did. And he looks at him and he goes, well, I've had those snowmobiles for 2 years and I haven't had a scratch on them. So I was off by a year. And then he says, you know, what you need to do is, he said, now that they're damaged, you need to buy them from me. And I said, well, now that they're damaged, I need a big discount. And so that was the only thing I could, is you got to, but the key for me you got to, children are natural mimics. No matter what we tell them to do or not to do, they continue to do what we do. Next day I come home, it's snowing. I can't even get my clothes off. My oldest son meets me at the door. I walk down in there and he goes, Dad, can you come downstairs? No, I got to take my clothes. No, come on. So I walk downstairs. Spencer and I were playing ping pong. The paddle slipped out of my hand and it dented the sheetrock. In a 24-hour period. But in your leadership area, everyone is watching what you're doing. Your kids are watching it. And it was so impactful for me that was in 1987 I saw that. Today we've got 3 grown kids. They're all married. They all got married in 1 year. Again, another topic. And we have 1 grandchild coming. The next area, your third gear, is on communications. And I think it's really huge. I believe that most people inside of business organizations today suffer from the one thing that's the most difficult. They do not even know how to communicate upward. And I think our practice of communicating with Christ upward is huge if we think about that, but they do not know how to talk about and just face difficult situations. I used to eat conflict for breakfast. My wife would say that, but that communication is so huge. And so I'm really focused. It all happens, all good things happen face to face. And especially when we're facing seemingly adverse obstacles. My wife and I did a safari this year in South Africa. It was unbelievable. I come back home. I'm taking our sales team on a telex safari right now. I'm having to face some difficult discussions with our customers where we failed them, and I get energized by it. Like John said, I go out and have those face-to-face discussions with our customers, and it turns things around. Be vigilant. I think Colin Powell said it. This is an area I lost during the road show. I was not paying attention to the details. I was paying more attention to what I was being charged to. You've got to be vigilant with your details. Know that you're staying on course. I'd like to say today, a strategy with a vision without execution is nothing but a dream. Because I felt that. I've got strategy, I've got execution and tactics, but it just becomes a dream. The 5th area is really on empathy. That's out of one of John's books, just connecting with others during difficult times. And I'm finding if you can find, every conversation with somebody is a difficult conversation. So if you don't even embrace this, it's always difficult. Any interaction I have inside my company, somebody's telling me about a situation that they're struggling with, whether it's in their business or there, and you've got to find that time to meet with them. The 6th area is on learning. I'm just a lifelong learner. I love it. I try to read something every day that I can apply today in technology or in the scriptures and that where I'm trying to learn. And General Shinseki said it so well. You know, if you don't like change, if you're a person that does it, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And it is so true because you're finding, I mean, Microsoft's going to be back on top. I bought Apple stock in 1998. That's how long ago. Today, Microsoft is switching. You can wait, and all of a sudden, someone's going to pass you up. And my final one is really about risk. You've got to be able to take some risks. Risk is an interesting thing. Each of us have a different amount that we can handle in our spaces, and it's really about seat time. I learned that when I took driving school a few years back at Bondurant Raceway, and you can start out on a track at 50 miles an hour and think you're going fast, and by the time you're done, you're doing 120, and you think that's just normal. That's what it's like in our life. And so taking those little tiny risks, it's the risk of making that call, it's the risk of dealing with a difficult situation, it's the risk of the relationship, it's the risk of the life team you're trying to accumulate right now because they're so important is just huge. And I'm a believer that, you know, WTF to me does not mean what the world says, it means willing to fail. You have got to be willing to fail. You got to, because if you're not, that right there, you haven't broken through that risk. And so finally, just as I close, I applaud everybody that's watching through on YouTube as well and the streaming, and then each one of you. My wife and I were talking right at lunch today, and she goes, "I wish I was here for the last 3 days." And it is because we really believe this. I do not believe businesses in the next decade will be successful at all without really returning to the roots of understanding their teams, their people, and the relationships. And personal and business do connect. We spend more time in our business lives that's awake, typically, than any other time during that 5-day week. And so we know we're going to see the impact of that. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Let's see. Well, again, a guy like Wayne who has, I mean, I just love the vulnerability of the chart, show the good and the bad. There's a lot we can learn from you. I guess the first question that came to mind was, you're a guy who is committed to the personal aspects, but you're highly strategic at the same time. And a lot of people say, well, I'm a strategist, so somebody else do the feeling or the relational stuff. And other people say, no, I'm the relational person, I can't do strategy. How do you put both in your head? Because you seem to do it pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, for years I listened to the idea that if you got involved with people in your teams that you're micromanaging. And I'm not that way. So like right now, I'm doing some switching up in our organization, and I'm working with the teams that worked for other people before. And what I really do is I just get down and walk in their shoes. My feeling is I can't understand the problem and the situation that they're going through unless I'm right down with them in that situation. And so it automatically feeds back the strategy. When you're there, you're going, oh, that's a gap. I can see that. That's why sales is having this struggle. That's why product is or manufacturing is. And so I'm down with the team and making them feel like I really am there.
What I've noticed about Wayne and just how you operate with people is you pay a lot of attention to strategy. It's important to you. And so you do kind of come in with that mindset for the conversation. It's not like you're just saying, we'll just talk about everything in the world. You know where the holes are. And so it's sort of like I'll watch you as you talk to one of your key employees, and you'll know there's a cash flow problem, or there's a consumer problem, or there's a product problem. And I'll hear you listen, and you have a really cool ability to take what they're saying and put it on the right pegs in your structural model. Mm-hmm. Is that a conscious thing?
Yeah, it's very conscious. I have a harder time communicating it to, and I'm learning that right now, is communicating it back to the people, because you talk about FOO, family of origin. I think we're not paying attention to WOO, which is work of origin.
Oh my gosh, there's a didactic right there.
Anytime I'm talking to that person, if they can't figure out how to hear me talk about the cash flow problem and they're only hearing this, the connection's lost.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the biggest struggle I have right now today is letting people is to walk not in my shoes, but walk so that I can mirror the other people they're not listening to.
Absolutely. All right, let's take your statement that you're the new Wayne WTF.
Little
I love
deal.
that. Let's take that, and can you just, I mean, so many people in our internet audience as well as our students are saying, okay, the guy went from 2 billion to much less. How did that affect you emotionally? How is it you've got a great marriage to Trina, great kids, you're doing so well inside when you had to tolerate that? They need to know this part.
Yeah, thank you. I think I don't look, maybe it's been a gift that God's given me, as I try not to look at what happened yesterday as defining who I am. It's more of shaping. But we had some tough situations. You know, I've had 4 of my relatives get laid off. I had to terminate one of my relatives, and, you know, going through, and then having a face-to-face with our daughter, who's our youngest today at 22, and she's 9, and she starts crying because I said, you know, we might not have Christmas presents this year, and going through it, and we might not be in the house anymore, and she looks at me, and I understand the mouth of a babe, and she said, will I lose my bed? And she's crying.
Oh my
Will I lose my bed? No, you won't lose your bed. But the issue is that I think what happened during the time frame is I became more focused on where they were at, but because of my adverse, you know, because I don't like anger so well, and that's, you know, what I appreciated about Gary's speech this morning, is that I did not deliver them a healthy dose of how to handle conflict like that. But yeah, it's I don't know. I've gotten over it. I mean, it's kind of like it is. I mean, it's 33 years next month for the business, and I'm just still ready on that growth and see what God's got in store.
Very cool. Now, I gave him so much flack about being a futurist because he's the #1 futurist in my life. Can you just sort of paint the picture of the next 10 years, technologically, business? I mean, it's nice to have that scope.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, first of all, I was thinking of doing a video. Like I'm turning 52 this October, so I was thinking like 20 years from now, if I was going to tell myself the video, what it would be, you know, and my grandkids, I would be like saying, well, I remember when you actually bought your washer and dryer and you didn't just pay per load at your house, because that's what's going to happen. You'll have a choice to still buy. I remember when your car, you actually used the steering wheel on your car. And so, you know, and I know you guys, but next year in January, Audi's got a car coming out that basically can do that. You just have to touch it every 15 seconds, so it's already, you're seeing the reality of this. I remember our youngest son saying, Dad, you remember those things that they were black when he was 11 years old, and they're like a Frisbee, but music was on? Oh, records, you know? And so you're, yeah, you're going to see quite a bit of change. You're going to see the job market's going to be the most impacted. That's where I'm really spending my space on. And, you know, we're moving to a society that's becoming more socialistic than it is capitalistic, and we don't have the entrepreneurial side. But the reality of this is that jobs get replaced with computers.
Yes.
And so if you're in the medical field and you're processing, anything you're processing, any paper you're processing today, and you're just transmitting a code or moving it to that, will become obsolete the next 5 years.
So the argument of, well, that's going to create other jobs may not all be true.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, I think you could see probably $40,000 to $70,000 a year jobs go away in that area. And in manufacturing, remember, we had 1,100 people in 2000 in our place. 65% were manufacturing. At that time in 2000, they were making pretty good money, from $16 to $20 an hour then, with full benefits, 401k, bonuses. And then they went out afterwards and couldn't get jobs because the next part of the society that was growing was the service industry, the thank you industry. Can I have a cup of coffee, a venti americano? And yes, and here you go, thank you. And so their work was here, the work wasn't here. And so you'll see the same thing, I think, in the manufacturing of reports. Anything that's manufacturing of reports, of paper and transitioning it, you're going to see that.
Almost like less essential stuff. So
Yep.
is where it might go.
Yep. And you'll walk into your house. I've got the little Amazon Echo at my house. My wife thinks the NSA is listening to us when I come in, but it's pretty funny because they'll just walk in, and you know you will come into your house at some point and say lights on, and it'll turn them on, and you'll say I want to watch CNN, and it'll turn CNN on, and so you look at those things, and you look at all of the product that goes around that from manufacturing that won't exist anymore. And we're really facing, it's cool on a lot of cases. I'm looking for the things that are the gaps. Those are the fun places to be. But it's cool when you look at the at what has happened to our globe. I mean, we really are in a full global economy. I mean, 30 years ago, we didn't have manufacturing outside the U.S., and then we had a Poland facility in '99. And I got to tell you how antiquated that facility was in Poland, because it had come out of the Soviet bloc 9 years before. And then today, if you go to Poland and Vietnam and Philippines, you're going to find Amada presses stamping metal. You're going to find the same powder coat paint. You're going to find the same plastics. You're going to find everything else that we have in the United States. And so there's not too much difference.
I'm going to ask you a question. There's 120 people here who want to go where you're going. Make them into a futurist. You do it because God threw something in your head and you just did it. But what can they do to be thinking more as you do? Any skills or attitudes that will help them?
Well, the first thing came up this morning, and I think it was between you and Gary talking about just the why.
Yeah.
Is the number, because why is the first thing that I do, is whenever you get something or you see something, why? You ask yourself why. Because a lot of people will get something and it doesn't work, and what they do is they stop right then, and then they go, it doesn't work. Well, what you're really saying is it doesn't work the way that you want it to work.
Wow.
And so you got to go, why? And when you do that, and then you follow the why, go, well, what were they? And then go, what were they thinking? And you start down the path of what were they thinking. And then you kind of go down each of it. And when you saw that with Oxford, when you pick it, I was showing you purposely that I retract things on there. I hit those and they came back down. Because when you get to a place that you don't know anymore, it's okay to come back and barricade yourself into that space. But then that's when it's important to go get more knowledge out there. So you're moving from that why to what were they thinking, and then how do I get more knowledge? And finally, you got to take a risk.
Curiosity and admitting what you don't know and screwing up and getting more data.
Yeah, everything in life, the best. My son said to me one time, he goes, and this is Mitch, our oldest, and he was telling it to me in context. He said, why is everybody always pursuing? We're talking about valleys and mountains. They're always pursuing to get to the top of Mount Everest when there's no oxygen up there. All the growth is in the valley. And it was really profound years ago hearing that, metaphor. Because I'm sitting there going, yeah, we're always trying to get here, but this is where the weather's at. This is where the snow hits, and that's the fun part about it.
You've given us a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Wayne Williams. Curiosity, screw up, be humble, take a risk.